Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. And thank you so much for being here. And here's what we're talking about today. Change is not going away, and it is actually rewriting the psychological contract that we have with our employees. The psychological contract is an interesting concept, and I talk about it quite often. It's essentially the unwritten set of expectations between employee and employer. For example, if you were to ask an employee, "What do you think your organization expects from you?" That employee might say, "Well, I need to show up on time. I need to be respectful. I need to follow rules. I need to be productive and do my best work." All of those things are expected by the employer, and they're generally things that are outlined in either an employee handbook or the organization as policies or procedures. Now, what does the employer expect? In return, the employee might say, "Well, I need to be paid fairly. I need to be treated respectfully. I need to have opportunities for growth and development. I need to be given the tools and resources needed to do my job well." These are all reasonable expectations, and these are things that are usually outlined in a formal employment agreement, or again, in the employee handbook or the organization as policies and procedures. So these are the unwritten expectations between the employee and the employer. And now, when we talk about the psychological contract, that contract can be rewritten. There are times where the organization will make changes, and those changes rewrite what is expected of the employee. For example, you may remember back in the early days of the pandemic, many organizations had to let people go. They didn't have enough business, the economy slowed down, and they had to lay off employees. At the same time, other organizations were struggling to find people to fill open positions. And so there was this huge shift that happened in the marketplace where employees were now in demand. So what was true in the past in terms of that psychological contract changed, because now employers were in competition with one another to attract and retain talent. So some of the things that were non-negotiable in the past, like requiring an employee to come into work every single day, even if that employee could do their job remotely, that changed. Some organizations started to embrace flexible work arrangements where employees could work from home part-time or full-time, depending on their role. Other organizations started offering higher wages, more generous benefits packages, student loan repayment, tuition assistance, professional development stipends. There was even talk of unlimited time off, although we don't really know how that works. I mean, unlimited time off sounds good, but does it really work? We don't really know. But these are examples of how the psychological contract was rewritten. What was true in the past is no longer true. And so the psychological contract had to change. What we're experiencing right now is constant change. Now, change can be positive. For example, technology has improved our lives in so many ways. Think about all of the things that you can do now that you couldn't do just 5 years ago. You probably couldn't even imagine doing them. But technology has advanced so rapidly that there are things that we take for granted today that weren't even around 5 years ago. So change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's very, very good. But this constant change that we're experiencing right now is unsettling. People don't know what's happening from one day to the next. They don't know what to expect. And this constant change is rewriting the psychological contract. Think about this from the employee's perspective. An employee starts working for an organization, and they have certain expectations. Maybe the expectation is that they'll be doing the same job for the next 20, 30 years. Maybe they expect to retire from that organization. They see people around them who have been with the organization for many, many years. So this idea of constant change and disruption is unsettling to employees because they don't know what to expect. We've seen companies that embrace flexible work arrangements, then change their mind and say employees have to come back into work. We've seen companies who said they would never ask employees to come back into work that have asked employees to come back into work. We've seen companies who embraced remote work and said, "You know what? We're not even going to have an office. Why pay for an office? Why pay for parking lots? Why pay for all of these things? Our employees can work from home forever." And then other organizations said, "No, we want people back in the office. We want them collaborating face to face." So this this constant change is unsettling to employees. There are employees who have been with an organization for many, many years. They've seen colleagues leave and join other organizations, and maybe those colleagues move on to better opportunities because they left, not necessarily because they were unhappy, but because they wanted to try something new. And those employees who stayed with the organization felt loyalty to that organization. They felt that loyalty would be rewarded. They thought that maybe someday they would get that promotion, they would get that pay raise, they would be recognized for their contributions. But instead, they're feeling stagnant. They feel like they're working harder and harder and doing more with less. And at the same time, they're looking at people who came in at the same time they did, even people who have less experience than they have, getting promoted, getting recognition, getting rewards. And it doesn't make sense to them. So what do those employees do? They start looking for other opportunities because this constant change, it's creating uncertainty. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what the future holds. And so they start looking for other opportunities. And this is why I think the Great Resignation isn't over. People don't know what to expect. They don't know what the future holds. And this constant change is rewriting the psychological contract. Organizational leaders need to acknowledge that this constant change is rewriting the psychological contract, and that means organizations need to do things to maintain the psychological contract. They need to make sure that employees know what's expected of them and what they can expect in return. And this is easier said than done. It's difficult for any organization to manage through change. It's difficult for an organization to communicate effectively during times of change, but it needs to happen. Leaders also need to recognize that this constant change is making employees disengaged and disloyal. And when employees are disengaged and disloyal, they're thinking about leaving the organization. They're thinking about finding other opportunities. And so, organizational leaders need to do something to improve engagement. They need to do something to improve retention. Now, I believe that it's possible for an organization to successfully manage through change. It's difficult, but it can be done. And it requires strong leadership. It requires effective communication. And it also requires that organizational leaders take care of themselves. When we're experiencing change, it's natural for us to look after ourselves. It's natural for us to focus on ourselves, on our own stress levels. But when organizational leaders take care of themselves, when they take the time to recharge, when they take the time to reflect, when they take the time to seek out support, it models that behavior for employees. And it also helps those leaders to be the best leaders that they can be. It's easy for leaders to fall into the trap of trying to fix everything, of trying to be everything for everybody. But when we're in that place, we're not able to take care of ourselves. We're not able to model that behavior for our employees. And ultimately, we're not able to help our employees through times of change. The bottom line is this: change is not going away. And this constant change is rewriting the psychological contract that we have with our employees. It's important for organizational leaders to recognize this. And it's important for them to take steps to ensure that they maintain the psychological contract with their employees. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please subscribe, leave me a comment, and let me know what you think. Share this video with others, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for being here.